But with this, without any further ado, we'd be moving on to our next session now, ladies and gentlemen. And this one is titled as CBDC and Crypto. Diving equality of opportunity by creating an inclusive financial system. That's the topic that we will be now divulging into. It's going to be a trialogue. So let me start by inviting in our moderator, who is Mr. Abhishek Gupta, Partner Economic Development Advisory, Ernst & Young. And along with him on the panel, it is going to be Mr. Mridul Gupta, Chief Operating Officer, Coindcx, and Dr. Sourav Dutta, Executive Director and Head ID, IDBI Bank. If I could have the fine gentleman taking over the stage for our next panel, please. Welcome in. Welcome, sir. We know it got delayed, but everything has been delayed since morning. But it's been exciting, I'm sure. That's ultimately what we're trying to drive here. Please join us. Could I also invite and request our audiences to kindly please settle in for the next session, please? Could I please kindly request all our delegates who are standing in near the front of the stage, if you could kindly please settle in, or if you could move towards the rear of the hall, please, as we'd like to move to our next session in the interest of time. Could I please request our delegates who are in front of the stage area to kindly please either proceed to the rear or take your seats?
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi everyone, and very good afternoon, all of you. We are starting with this session around CBDC and crypto. So please settle down. So as a very quick round of introduction, this is a half-an-hour session, and this will be an interactive session where we'll not only have questions from all of you, but at the same time, there are a few thoughts and few questions from me to the two esteemed panelists. So myself, I'm Abhishek from EY, and we are the knowledge partners for this entire conference. And I have around 20 years of government consulting experience working on various government policies and programs, implementation or monitoring of those programs. And certainly this is an upcoming area where we have also taken interest, and we are advising a few state governments and central ministries across the world rather on these subjects. So that's a quick introduction about myself. The format, as I just mentioned, we will ask each panelist to quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll have a few questions. I'll ask a few questions to them so that all of us are on the same page in terms of these concepts and few of the common questions which have come from you. And then in the end, we'll have a Q&A with all of you. So that's going to be the format of this session. So with that, if I may just ask the panelists to quickly introduce themselves and also give a quick overview of what are their thoughts about this particular agenda, and then we get into the Q&A. Over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. Hi, this is Mridul. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Coindcx. We are the largest crypto platform in India, which facilitate your entry to the gateway to the ecosystem of blockchain, cryptos, metaverse, digital assets, whatever you call it. I think fundamentally in the past 10 years, this ecosystem has grown leaps and bounds. We are talking about an ecosystem which has an asset pool of $1 trillion globally. 500 million people have crypto holdings globally. Billions of dollars get traded globally on international and Indian exchanges. I think we are still here, and we have to be, like, in the next 10 years bigger than some of the largest industries out there. It's evolving in a way internet evolved, And I think world moves towards efficient ecosystems. And internet 30 years ago was by the geeks for the geeks. And then 30 years forward, 10 to 15% of global GDP is being created on the internet. And I think that's the same phase crypto is in today. Happy to answer some of the questions from my fellow panelists and from you guys.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. It's been a pleasure to be here. I am Sourav Dutta. I am the Executive Director of IDBI Bank, heading the IT of IDBI. And from a bank's perspective, all of you must have heard that in the recent budget of 2022, the finance ministers had mentioned about CBDC, right, which is the central bank's digital currency. And there has been a lot of work going on in that area. So from a central bank's perspective, it's been there for some time now. Most of the other economies have also looked into it. But for a full-fledged adoption, there has to be some kind of a consensus as well as some regulations around it, how the central bank digital currency would evolve in a country like ours. So yeah, those are the thoughts. I've been in the industry. So I've been in the industry for more than 30 years, been into various technology as well as from a business perspective. So yeah, we'll take it forward from there.
Yes, thank you, Mridul, thank you, Sourav. So few questions we'll ask the panelists, and in the meantime, please feel free in case you have any questions. So Mridul, you gave a beautiful example of relating it to the internet. What is the real importance of crypto when we talk about internet? Of course, now you know it has to be there. It's an hygiene factor. What is the importance of crypto? Why do we think that this is the thing of the future?
So I think in the past 50 or 100 years of industrialization, one thing which has not changed is the ownership structure. Earlier it was manufacturing companies, then maybe the financial companies, then maybe the internet companies. But fundamentally the power is held in the hands of a few, and this has been the longest possible cry in the ecosystem, right? Retailers cry because Amazon takes all the power, cab drivers cry because Uber takes all the power, influencers cry because Facebook takes all the power, information companies cry because Google takes all the power. I think blockchain and crypto fundamentally is changing that. The ownership structure is getting redistributed, and fundamentally we are creating a democratized ecosystem for all the ecosystem participants out there, right? If you participate, you get certain value out of it. If you don't, you don't. And the rules are decided by the ecosystem participants and not by a handful of companies which are first movers in the ecosystem. That's the fundamental nature which is getting changed because of crypto and blockchain. And blockchain is powerless if you don't have that open ecosystem on top enabled by crypto. And if you see, this is the fundamental thought which is now enabling all the central banks and governments to finally make calls on CBDC, right? Can we have a world where we can have a truly digital currency powered by central banks, monitored by governments, but which enables easy facilitation of easy movement of money from one corridor to another, impacts financial inclusion, but at the same time also makes it very, very people first financial ecosystem, right? What we have been able to crack in the past few years is maybe UPI, which seamlessly moves money from one corridor to another, but we have not been able to deliver financial services to the remotest towns and villages. We have not been able to solve problems related to international remittances. We have not been able to solve problems related to ownership structure for various big techs which influence the ecosystem. And I think our government is taking the right steps in that direction, but fundamentally blockchain and crypto solves for that.
Fantastic. Power to the common man. Sourav, on CBDC, you spoke about progress happening across the world. Where do you think India stands today, and what do you see as the future of CBDC in the next few months or next few years, in the medium term? Where do you see this going, and what is the current status?
Yeah. So before I answer that, just let me give a brief introduction on what CBDC is, right? So it's a digital currency, as the name suggests. Yes, it's digital currency, and in fact, it's no different than the cryptos of the world, right? But the main fact here is it is being backed by the central bank. So you have something as a trust, as a backing from the government itself. So that's where the main difference is from the private cryptos or the cryptocurrencies and the CBDC. Now, having said that, how it's going to evolve is that it's got various, everything has got a pros and cons, right? Similarly, for CBDCs, the pros would be that in the use cases that we see going forward is for payments, whether it's a retail payment, whether it's a wholesale payment. Mostly for the cross-border transactions, that is something which will definitely help. Major advantage of the blockchain technology or the DLT, the distributed ledger technology, is basically that you have instant recon, right? The audit trails are absolutely secure. You have complete compliance. Audit is, I mean, it's given. Or you do not run any audit. Audit is given, right? And with that also, there was talk in the previous session about privacy, right? So again, with the blockchain, there will be complete trail, digital trail as to who is transacting and where the money is going. So again, that is something that has to, we have to come up with that. So from a very large economy like India, right? So China had tried sometime in 2014. They had already had this, they got chain, China chain, they had called it. So they had tried it, many other economies also tried it. From an Indian perspective, we are just starting. And there has been a lot of work in the area from the regulator itself. They have been trying a POC with various banks. The idea is basically that unless everybody is on the same bandwagon, CBDC, the effort will go waste. You know? It has to be on the same, everybody has to be on the same platform in order to transact. Unless there is the same platform, you cannot transact. So CBDC is the main primary authority giving the power, and then the various banks and the financial institutions will be able to transact or transfer the money across in a digital format. Now again, the problem is that, for example, if you have, it saves on two sides. One is that if you have the cryptocurrency, you don't have to print the paper currency, right? So, but again, that creates a problem. What if I want the paper currency now? I transact and I transfer money to you in a crypto fashion. Now, how do I want to get the money out? What is the modalities? How does the central bank looks at it, right? So those are the things that has to come up. There will be, of course, the regulations coming up on those areas. It's still at a nascent stage at the moment, but yes, we are moving forward to that, and it's going to help the economy in a way that it's going to have a stabilizing effect in terms of less amount of cash in circulation. That's the idea basically, to be a little more cashless. But again, it is not a replacement of the cash of the society, right? It's no way it's going to replace it. The things which Mridul mentioned, the UPIs, the NFT, RTGS, which are the core backbone of the transaction, of digital transaction of India, of the Indian economy today. So that's also going to be there. So the DLT or the blockchain is going to be an additional rail on top of the existing rail which is already running. It's not a replacement. So it's definitely going to be there. They're going to coexist. How and what are the modalities? That is something that has to be looked into. And going forward, this is now a mature technology has come out of the hype curve. We are seeing a lot of the cryptos are there, currencies in the market. But again, there's a point because in India it's still a bit of in the gray area, right? So, and of course with the taxation coming in, 30% TDS. So we have to really see how that works out. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sourav. So, Mridul, Sourav spoke about the system maintaining its own audit trail, which means perhaps the auditors are running out of business. But then, what are the business opportunities for our audience? What are the business opportunities for startups? What are the business opportunities for various existing business in this domain? What can they look forward to over the next few years?
I think this is my favorite question. So I think lots and lots of business opportunities. Multi-billion-dollar companies are getting created in the ecosystem. Let me maybe divide it into 3 subsets of opportunities people can go after. Number one is native blockchain and what you can do on that, right? compliance, analytics, maintenance, scalability, reliability. Deeper in blockchain, a lot of things can be done and solved for, which have not been solved because the industry is new, and there's a plethora of opportunities there. The second bucket is the use cases opportunity, where blockchains or the end platforms can be developed for use cases. For example, I could build a social media platform which is fundamentally decentralized. I could build a cab hailing platform which is fundamentally decentralized. We are seeing a lot of new blockchains come up for that. Solana is there, Polygon is there, and all of these are multi-billion-dollar companies today. And they fundamentally solve for decentralized use cases which earlier existed in the centralized world, and how to make that more efficient, how to make that better, and how to get larger ecosystem participation on these use cases. And the third bucket is on the layer which we play in, so connecting the normal world to the crypto world. And here the opportunities are either build businesses similar to us, so exchange, broker, money management services, where I can take your money and give you certain returns out of it, or you could build businesses which serve these industries. For example, on-ramp, off-ramp for getting money in crypto and money outside crypto is the largest problem, right? If we solve this opportunity, it's a global opportunity. People are just waiting to get hooked to the right player, and these businesses can scale to multi-billion dollars, right? KYC, big opportunity. How do we solve for KYC in crypto? Compliance, how do we solve for compliance, AML, all the policies around that, big opportunity. Taxation, large opportunity, right? So I look at opportunities in three buckets: core blockchain, use cases, and then connecting people to these use cases, which is a layer where we belong.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mridul. Sourav, there are a whole lot of regulators in the system today, while obviously RBI being the mecca of it. But then, what role do these various systems and stakeholders play? So be it ONDC on one side, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, be it NPCI, be it RBI, does SEBI have a role to play? Banks, of course, have a huge role to play. I'm not talking about the private sector. They obviously have a great role to play. But from the government perspective, what is the overall ecosystem? Who are the key stakeholders currently discussing this agenda?
Yeah. So from a government perspective, of course, like you mentioned, all of those players are there. So the central bank definitely is the nodal agency to regulate and to formulate rules and the laws around it, right? So that's number one. Second is that all the participating banks and the fintechs associated, or the payment systems, financial payment organizations or systems which are associated with that. So those are again being part of that whole thing. That's how the whole ecosystem looks. And then of course, it goes down to the lower levels, right? So for example, for a retail transaction, right? So how that's going to work? Because for cash, it is anonymous, right? So how do I transact without having a bank account, right? So those things come into place. For example, right from the private cryptos you can just transact directly without having any, a track as to what you're doing, right? But of course, there's a track, the digital platform, so you always have a digital footprints are always there. But from a totally anonymous perspective, how do you work forward in a completely retail scenarios? So those are the things that the regulator and the government has to look into. There are also talks of how it's going on. Recently, you must have heard, day before yesterday only, there was a note in the Rajya Sabha where finance minister had answered some of the queries on the cryptos and how RBI is looking at cryptos, right? So they are not in directly favor of cryptos. And of course, there's no black and white as of now, but going forward, there has to be some formulation, there has to be some regulation to see, because it's a huge market and people have already invested. So there has to be something. You just cannot throw it out of the window, right? So that has to be there, some regulations. So work is, the discussions are going on, and we'll see soon some activity in that area. But CBDC is certainly something that, because it is backed by the government itself, so we'll see traction in that areas. And I think the most viable use case will be that in terms of the cross-border transactions, and maybe in, for example, most of the software companies, right? So for where the transactions coming billions of dollars, So those things will be done in a CBDC fashion. The INR will get converted into CBDC and IFSC will be converted into those. So those discussions, those talks are happening. But those are the main players in the whole thing. So government, the regulator, and the primarily the banks and the payment systems associated with the banks, for example, RTGS, NEFT, UPI, right? So those things will be part of those, and those rails along with that, maybe it's because they're still evolving. Whether it's a mix and match, it will be definitely, to my mind, it will be a mix and match of the existing NEFT, RTGS, UPI rails along with the DLT technology. It will be mix and match.
Right. Thank you, Sourav. And Mridul, I'll come to you with this last question before we open the floor. So, if the people in the audience or if general ecosystem, they need some information, they need some help, they need some guidance, who can they reach out to? Are there any government stakeholders, any associations, any forums, any websites, any publications, any private sector organizations, any incubators? Who can they reach out to? Which is the right source of information for them?
So for crypto, the beauty about the industry is that all information is available on the internet, because fundamentally the industry is trying to create decentralized ecosystems, right? So every association, company, body will only have a certain view of the ecosystem. What I would urge people is to try understand it by themselves. For example, when they download a crypto app, decide which currency to, which token currency or asset to buy, go about it, read the white paper for that. Every currency, every crypto asset has a white paper. What is the fundamental technology behind it? Now this white paper itself talks about why this exists in the first place, what is the technology, who are the people participating in this, how can you contribute to this, right? And that's the beauty of the industry. Think about writing a software for Google. You just cannot write that unless you are an employee. But can you write a software which influences the next halving of Bitcoin? Yes, you can, right? And that's what people should start doing. Beyond just the price movement of the crypto assets, it's very important to understand what asset brings to the table, right? What is the technology innovation? And I think once you understand that and catch hold of that, you are poised for success. And I compare this to people who joined internet in 1990s, right? People who joined internet in 1990s created billion-dollar companies, generated wealth for investors, created new age jobs, and impacted lifestyles across the globe in 2000s, right? So if you do it now, you are positioning yourself for success in the next 10 years. It's the right time to get in the industry, learn about it, not just go with the price movement and making 5x or 3x returns now versus later. I think fundamentally the job ecosystem revolves and gets reiterated, and fundamentally it changes every 10 years, right? iOS application developers as a job did not exist like 15 years ago, right? Website creation as a job did not exist 30 years ago, right? And financial instruments as a concept did not exist 50 years ago, right? So every 20 years you see new jobs being created, and the next jobs being created are blockchain and crypto jobs. We have seen 10x increase in the number of blockchain developers globally in the last 2 years. So if you get in the ecosystem now, you learn about it, and then you create the next set of wealth and next set of opportunities for others to participate.
Well, the policymakers will love you for creating so many jobs. Thank you so much. Questions from the audience, please. Can we have the mic this side, please?
Hi, this is Sudipta here. On the whole crypto thing, right? Why is it there's such a polarized opinion? Like Bill Gates, says that it's for greater full theory. RBI is against it. I think even in the 90s, nobody was actually against the internet so much, right? I know we all compare it to the internet and the next revolution, but smart, intelligent people are also, they don't understand this or the benefits of it, right? I mean, why would Bill Gates is not a fool to just call it something like that, right? And my second question is the whole the concept of stable coins, right? How does that exist with CBDC? And a related question, if a CBDC is actually, managed by the central government, what is decentralized about it? I mean, I just don't understand a CBDC because my whole bank, my money that I have, right? I don't have cash. I have whatever the money, it's in digital format only, right? So what is, I mean, I can understand Saurav's point about cross-border part. Maybe that might have a use case, but I just don't understand the use cases there. So I know there were 2-3 questions in it, but maybe Mridul, you can start with the smart Bill Gates,
Yeah,
the
there are
greater fool theory.
four questions hidden in one question. But
Sorry about that.
please go ahead.
Very hard to walk into Bill Gates' shoes, first of all.
Not
But
just
I
Bill
think
Gates,
everyone.
a lot of people.
But I think fundamentally, when internet got born, a lot of the use cases, and I would not shy away from using the term, were porn related, right? And a lot of new technologies, be it web conferencing, be it online payments, be it communication, came from that industry. So people were against internet even in the early days and remained so till the 1999 crash, after which the internet started picking, right? So I think there are pros and cons of every new technology. It is bound to happen. You cannot have a technology which is not having any cons, only having only pros, right? Because that would have got adopted. And people who see pros and are bullish on pros will always be pro it, and the other side will always be against it. I think it's important to have both the sides so that you understand where the gaps are and start filling those gaps, right? For example, crypto, the biggest gap is the ownership of the wallet IDs. And because people have been highlighting that as the biggest gap, there have been enough and more use cases built on top of crypto which help you understand if the wallet is genuine or if the wallet is not genuine, right? And they do risk modeling on top. They do they track the transactions from the very first Genesis transaction and are able to tell you if the wallet belongs to the rightful holder or not, right? So every technology will have a con side to it. Even internet today has a lot of cons, and I think it's in our interest to keep evolving these technologies so that they can be better in the next few years. On the CBDC, I would pass the mic to Sourav, but I think when we look at CBDC, we are looking at only one country. There are 100+ countries out there, and everybody has a different system. Everybody has a different monetary policy altogether. And I think the beauty of CBDC would not be that one country adopts CBDC. The beauty of CBDC will come when multiple countries adopt CBDCs and the global trade and the global movement becomes seamless.
Yeah. So, from a CBDC perspective, like I mentioned, the use cases was one of them was definitely the cross-border. But from a payments terms, interbank transaction, settlement of interbank transaction immediately, instantaneously, securities, right? So all of those areas will come into effect once the CBDC comes into play. The best part is that the audit trail, like I mentioned, no? There's an audit trail, compliance, data compliance, all those things, security issues, ownership issues gets resolved immediately. So those are the benefits of having CBDC. European Union also has started CBDC. They are on billion, right? They're not on the the Hyperledger Foundation. They're not on Hyperledger. They're on billion. The Hyperledger has got some of the limitations. For example, the mining issue, right? So how do you solve? Because there's something called nonce. If you can get the 32-bit nonce, you can crash the entire chain, right? So you can start a chain by itself. So there's the technology behind it, how it evolved, right? So blockchain has got different technologies, and it has got its own plus and minuses. But of course, it has to be seen as everybody coming on the same bandwagon at the same time with the same common goal, unless then the CBDC will be effective, right?
Right, Sourav, thank you. I think we are just up with the time. Maybe one last question that gentleman had. Yes, please. You had a question. Sorry, it's just that we only got half an hour.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Abhishek this side. My question is, should there be any depository kind of a thing between the blockchain node and the wallet? To Mridul.
Deposit. He means
NHDL or a CDSL or such kind of a depository mechanism, because the wallets may not be on the blockchain, but the marketplaces are on the node.
So I think blockchain fundamentally allows you to look at balances and transactions. You can download the code and look at everything, and that's the fundamental part of blockchain decentralization. The moment you create depositories, these depositories can become very large entities, and they become centralized, and that defeats the purpose of blockchain altogether. Right? So blockchain succeeds because different people can participate, and basis their participation can get crypto as a reward, which can be traded in the market for capital gains. The moment you have the same centralized layers which existed in the Web 2 world, in the Web 3 world, the purpose gets defeated. I'm not saying that there is no problem. There is a problem. But is the solution the Web 2 solution? Maybe, maybe not. Right? We'll get to see it, how some of the Web 3 solutions evolve for that.
Thank you so much, Mridul. And again, we are done with the time. I would really like to thank all of you, first of all, for being such a patient audience and for the questions from the two gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mridul. Thank you so much, Sourav, for answering those questions. And over to you.
Thank you very much. We do understand this was indeed a session that got you all going, but in the interest of time, we had to close it. But of course, the speakers are here, the panelists are here. Please feel free to go ahead and have a talk and maybe have a clarification on the questions that you have. We are glad you're enjoying the sessions that we have curated for you.